All right, shifting gears for the balance of the hour. We really appreciate his time. He's one of the most prestigious authors and lecturers and newsletter writers for Newsmax out there. Dr. Russell Blaylock is a prestigious brain surgeon and expert on the brain. And RussellBlaylockMD.com is one of the websites you can visit. He's a board-certified neurosurgeon, author, and lecturer. He attended LSU School of Medicine in New Orleans and completed his general surgical internship and neurosurgical residency at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. During his residency, he ran the neurology program for 1 year and did a fellowship in neurosurgery after his residency. For the past 25-plus years, he's participated in neurosurgery in addition to having a nutritional practice. He recently retired from both practices to devote full-time to nutritional studies and research. During his residency training, he worked with the eminent neurosurgeon, Dr. Ludwig Kempe. Together they developed the and it's all scientific terms, removal of intervascular tumors, which is one of the most widely used systems today. He has presented their cases utilizing the technique to the Congress of Neurological Surgeons. Look, it's a long bio, multi-pages. I'm going to stop right there. And, of course, we've had many other medical doctors and brain surgeons and endocrinologists and just on backing up what he's saying. But he has all the studies. This stuff is not secret. And we're going to be discussing it with him today. But he was very critical of the H1N1. He pointed out that it popped up in the wrong hemisphere, wrong time of year. Many other scientists, virologists said it was engineered in the lab. We know that other big companies with the bird flu killed a bunch of people. That was the London Telegraph. In fact, Google homeless die in bird flu vaccine trial. That got covered up. And then, 3 months ago, we had Wolfgang Woodrig, a medical doctor from Germany, on who ran the EU 47-nation board. So I'm just prefacing this before we go to him. 47-nation board that found that the UN and others were paid off by Big Pharma to lie and create this hoax. And now we have all this mainstream news. New Canadian study suggests seasonal flu shot increased H1N1 risk. Here's another one. WHO admits that they exaggerated the dangers of H1N1, Times of India. Here's another one. Seasonal flu shot may increase H1N1. Western Australian reports of adverse reactions to seasonal flu and H1N1. Millions of H1N1 vaccine have been recalled, Washington Post. So again, Dr. Blaylock and others got attacked by the mainstream media for even questioning this. Well, here they are, vindicated yet again. So we're going to talk about the flu in hindsight and then other toxins in our food and water. Dr. Blaylock, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Alex.
Good to have you here. Well, you've got the floor. Let's talk about vaccines, mercury, the studies that you've looked at about the increases of Alzheimer's, brain damage. Explain what's really going on here.
Well, I think just a brief review of this whole fiasco of the H1N1 is very telling, and we need to remember this next year because this is going to be revisited. We're going to go through the same thing all over again. And you remember the major government organizations, CDC, the Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, National Institutes of Health, all of them were just sending the same message out that this is going to be a killer virus. It's going to target pregnant women. It's going to target young people. It's going to be the most devastating thing we've ever seen. World Health Organization, of course, started this nonsense. Yet when you actually got into the journals, the real high-tech journals that were discussing this, it didn't match what the government was saying. And we're talking about our government as well as the international body, the UN World Health Organization. What the science was actually saying is that this virus is difficult to transmit, more difficult than the seasonal flu, that it is not that pathogenic, and they didn't expect it to cause that much death. All of this science, reported in the best of the science journals, was ignored. Even the CDC was secretly doing studies which found that this virus was very difficult to transmit. Yet when you turned on your television, here's the news media saying, oh, this is so easy to transmit, it's just going to spread all over the world. We're expecting the ICUs, the intensive care units, to be overwhelmed. We're not going to have enough respirators for all the people that's going to need them. young women are going to die that are pregnant in mass numbers. They were putting out figures of 90,000 expected to die, on and on and on. Yet the science the whole time was saying none of that's true. When you actually got on the CDC site, you found out, well, your whole basis for this mass vaccination and threat of forced vaccination has no foundation whatsoever from your own data. Well, it soon became obvious that the number of infections by H1N1 was nowhere near what the government was saying, and that the death rate was far less than 0.01%. So that meant your chances of being seriously ill or dying from this flu was less than 99.9%. So it was less dangerous than the regular seasonal flu. And then when the actual flu came through, its first big wave, that's exactly what we saw. The death rate for the entire world was astronomically low, incredibly low. Well, then their next method of scaring the public was, oh, we're watching the southern hemisphere. We're expecting millions to die. Well, the flu went through the southern hemisphere. In both of its waves, it had one of the lowest death rates of any flu season that's ever been recorded. And that includes young children, that includes pregnant women, that includes the young, all of these so-called targeted age groups. And then I started looking at the New England Journal of Medicine, which was doing the largest studies on the flu in the southern and northern hemisphere. And ironically, they left out one of the most important factors in the people that were dying, and that's that they were obese and that they were smoking. Well, they did mention the obese connection, but it was never entered the media.
Well, Doctor, most of the deaths we saw were people who were 75 years old, had double amputations from diabetes, had lung problems, and then I would see a month later that, oh, this fella in Austin really didn't die. It was a false positive H1N1. They died of complications from something else. So there was also lots of hyping people who hadn't died from it.
Well, everything they said about it ended up a lie. In other words, they were saying, well, the people were dying from bacterial pneumonia after they got the flu, and that it was pneumococcal pneumonia, and therefore they need a pneumococcal vaccine as well. Well, when you looked at the autopsy reports, it said, well, most of the pneumonias were not pneumococcal, and there was no vaccine to protect anybody from it. And that, as you said, most of these people had serious illnesses, diabetes or autoimmune diseases, immune deficiency diseases, cancers. So even in the children that were dying, they were sick children. They were not normal, healthy children. But if they could find a so-called healthy person that died from it or became seriously ill, that's the one they plastered all over the news. So they would tell the public, oh, your healthy teenager is at horrendous risk. Look, here's a case. They had to search high and low to find the case. Most of the cases were from sick children.
Well, it's even worse than that.
All the sick children and sick adults, you had very few cases of anyone else dying from this flu. It was all concocted from A to Z, and this is what's so upsetting about the government. The government knew all of this. They had access to the same information I did. So they knew from the very beginning and all throughout that this was a lie. This was all nothing but a concocted epidemic to sell vaccines and to do damage to large numbers of people in this country. Now, you remember when I first talked to you about this, when all this started, I said Guillain-Barré is going to be a big danger of this vaccine, particularly in the countries where they're using the MF59 adjuvant.
Well, let me interrupt you. Let me interrupt you, Doctor. I know a whole bunch of people, talk show hosts that are 42 years old, you name it, that went and got the shot, and their hands and feet are still numb, and they got Guillain-Barré, and I know people that are in the hospital dying right now. I know a whole bunch of people in Austin that took it and are in deep trouble.
Well, my point being is when they first started this, they said, oh, we're carefully tracking Guillain-Barré because of the risk factor. Have you heard any major network do a follow-up?
No.
Have you seen it in any newspaper, a follow-up of what they found? But what you're saying is exactly true, because I get emails from all over the world and all over the country of people telling me this same story. In fact, one person...
Doc, stay there. Doc, sorry to interrupt. We got a break. Come back and tell us that story on the other side. And I've got a list of questions for you. You know, what was really in the vaccine? Well, we have the insert, but you can tell us what these ingredients mean. Stay with us. Dr. Russell Blaylock.